since the beginning of the pandemic, with 3,300 new cases and 63 new deaths on Friday. The death toll passed 17,000 people. Ilfov County near Bucharest still has the highest infection rate in Romania, with a rate of 4.5 cases per 1,000 inhabitants over the course of 14 days. The next highest infection rates are in Timiș County in the west, Cluj County in the northwest, and the capital Bucharest. The government adopted an emergency order on Friday on the establishment of vaccination centers and the recruitment and payment of the vaccination staff. Health Minister Vlad Voiculescu said his ministry would cover the cost of the vaccination campaign and that he relied on GPs to inform their patients about the vaccine and make the appointments. He said GPs would receive additional pay for this service. He also gave assurances that schools will be safe to return to if they reopen on the 8th of February. He pointed out that education workers can get the vaccine during phase 2 of the vaccine rollout. Despite a slowdown of Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine deliveries in late January and early February, Pfizer gave assurances that the doses expected by the European Union in the first quarter of the year will be supplied as scheduled, said European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, after health ministers from 6 EU countries signed a joint letter voicing deep concern over the announced delays. Meanwhile, tighter restrictions are being imposed in Europe following a spike in cases. Germany passed 2 million cases on Friday, and Sweden's death rate is growing. Austria remains in lockdown but is reopening schools on the 25th of January, while Italy has extended its state of emergency. France is also seeing rising infections, and Portugal enters a new lockdown for at least another month, following an exponential rise in new cases. Almost 94 million coronavirus infections and over 2 million deaths are reported globally. Liviu Dragnea, a former leader of the Social Democratic Party and Speaker of the Chamber of Deputies in Bucharest, was indicted in a new corruption case for peddling in influence. The case is connected to his presence in Washington at the inauguration of US President Donald Trump at the beginning of 2017. Dragnea is accused by prosecutors of receiving undue advantages for himself and his party worth $380,000, consisting in the travel package for the trip, political consultancy, and various lobbying services. Dragnea is currently serving time in prison for incitement to commit abuse of office. In another move, the National Anti-Corruption Directorate has announced the start of criminal prosecution against the former Prime Minister and Senate Speaker Călin Popescu-Tăriceanu for bribe-taking, freezing some of his immovable assets in amount of $800,000. Tăriceanu, who was heard on Friday, said the prosecutor's action is based on false premises. Romania celebrated on Friday 171 years since the birth of the poet Mihai Eminescu, with online events or events without a live audience. As a tribute to Romania's greatest poet, January the 15th was declared National Culture Day, aimed at promoting culture, the arts, and academic achievement. The holiday has been celebrated since 2010 in Romania, the neighboring Republic of Moldova, and in the Romanian communities abroad. Diplomatic and consular missions, as well as Romanian cultural institutes abroad, hosted special events. Radio Romania celebrated Mihai Eminescu's role in the national and world culture with special shows, introduced documentaries, and festive events. Culture Minister Sorin Câmpeanu issued a statement saying the celebration of National Culture Day is about being aware of the country's achievements and promoting them efficiently, credibly, and with determination. And that was the news.
Romania enters the second stage of the vaccination campaign, which targets people at high risk and those working in key fields. I'm Mihaela Ignatescu with more in this report by Eugen Foroianu. Romania has entered the second stage of coronavirus vaccination for the high-risk population and workers in key essential areas. The first category includes adults over the age of 65, as well as people with chronic diseases, regardless of age, depending on the indications of the vaccines used. The chronic diseases category includes diseases such as diabetes, obesity, and other metabolic diseases, cardiovascular, kidney, lung, or liver diseases, oncological, neurological, and autoimmune diseases, severe immunosuppression, patients undergoing biological or long-term therapies with corticosteroids, HIV/AIDS patients. The second category includes the key personnel for the functioning of state institutions, including presidential administration, parliament, government, ministries, and institutions subordinated to them, personnel in the field of defense, public order, national security, and the judiciary, staff in vital economic sectors such as processing, distribution, and marketing of staple foods, water distribution plants, water treatment plants, transportation and distribution, production, transport and distribution of electricity, gas, liquid and solid fuels, medicines and sanitary materials, transport of persons and goods, railway hubs, civil and military airports, essential ports, communications, including National Telecommunications Service, National Radio and Television, school and nursery staff, postal and courier staff, the staff of religious denominations, media personnel engaged in activities with an increased risk of exposure to SARS-CoV-2, sanitation and waste disposal personnel. Those who want to register for vaccination can use several means, including a special online platform. The first stage, which ended on Thursday, covered employees in the medical and social fields. More than 160,000 people were immunized, with nearly 600 common and minor side effects reported. Romania mainly uses the vaccine produced by Pfizer-BioNTech, but a first installment from Moderna arrived in the country on Wednesday. Both vaccines are authorized, contracted, and delivered by the European Union. Mass vaccination is the only solution to get back to normal as soon as possible and to resume safely all the activities we have greatly missed in the last year, President Klaus Iohannis said in a press conference on Tuesday. He also said that the success of the vaccination campaign is essential for both the recovery of the economy and the avoidance of severe crisis, the effects of which can leave deep scars in society.
Most Romanian schools may reopen on February 8th. I'm Elena Enache with more on this topic in a report by Roxana Vasile. Most schools in Romania might reopen on February 8th at the beginning of the second half of the school year, Romanian President Klaus Iohannis has announced. However, there is an important nuance to this announcement, namely the fact that in-person classes will be held only depending on the epidemiological situation. That is why a final decision will be taken on February 2nd in a new assessment meeting similar to that which President had with Prime Minister Florin Câțu, Health Minister Vlad Voiculescu and Education Minister Sorin Câmpeanu on Thursday. President Klaus Iohannis said students would return to school based on a three-column model put into force last fall that shows the infection rate in every locality. Klaus Iohannis.
Scenariul verde, toți merg la școală. Scenariul galben, grădinițele, clasele 1, 4, 8 și 12 merg la școală.
If we are in the green scenario, everybody goes to school. In the yellow scenario, kindergartens, the 1st to 4th grade, the 8th grade and the 12th grade students hold in-person classes, while the others hold online classes. The red scenario, applied when the number of reinfections per 1,000 people is exceeded, will keep at home 5th to 8th grade students and high schools, while kindergartens and primary school children hold in-person classes. That was President Klaus Iohannis.
In the university system, which is autonomous, the decision to resume in-person courses will be taken by each institution. But according to President Klaus Johannes, universities can copy the model of the pre-university system. The National Students' Council can be nothing but satisfied that the decentralization it sought in terms of reopening of schools might again be applied as of February 8th. The Council has recently signaled the fact that online classes are tiring, inefficient, and totally unsustainable on the long run, and that numerous students, especially from the underprivileged category, have no access to education because they have no access to computers or the internet. In Romania, schools were opened only for 2 months between March 2020 and January 2021. UNICEF has in turn pleaded for schools to be kept open or reopened all over the world to prevent multiple and devastating consequences, while World Vision Romania said the major learning gaps and school dropouts can affect a whole generation. A former Minister of Education, now Director of the National School of Political and Administrative Studies, Remus Pricopie, has asked for the topic of school reopening to be approached with responsibility in a fair and realistic manner so as not to create false expectations among students, teachers and parents. And that has been our newscast. Time now for Hit of the Day on Radio Romania International. Listen to DJ Project featuring Andia and their song Witness.
Ok, sunt în regulă. Uite cum ne despart. Pașii pe asfalt. Ne pierdem și nu știm. De lupta orgolilor. De raport neiertat. E murit repetat. Și mă doare uitat. Că-ai să uiți să dorești. Mă doare și marea. Vreau să mă retrec. Vol de tine sufletul, că slăbiciunea mea ești tu. Vol de tine lumea mea, dar tu ești slăbiciunea mea. Haideți să ne găsim, iarăși ne îndepărtăm. E totul nu s-a explicat pentru ce ne pierdem. Am uitat să riscăm și mă doare uitat. Că-ai să te dorești. Mă doare și marea, vreau să mă retrec. Mă vol de tine sufletul, că slăbiciunea mea ești tu. Vol de tine lumea mea, că tu ești slăbiciunea mea. Sau să ne înțelegem. Nimeni să nu desfăge.
You are listening to Radio Romania International. Focus on Romania. The future starts today.
Hello and welcome to our geopolitics feature. I am Kalin Kotsoglu. The pandemic took by surprise and upended the entire world and put an exceptional burden on researchers finding a vaccine against the novel coronavirus in record time. In an unprecedented act of mobilization, in less than a year from the first confirmed case, several vaccines were created. The first to be approved and distributed for immunization were the ones made by the American company Pfizer and the German company BioNTech. Then came the Moderna vaccine, with more on the way. From now on, ambitious plans for immunization can only be in jeopardy by mistrust among the population or disruptions in the chain of distribution, according to experts. With the advent of vaccines, the question that arises is when the pandemic will be over. As a guest on Radio Romania, Dr. Emiliana Popovici, Vice President of the Romanian Epidemiological Society, spoke about the percentage of the population that needs to be vaccinated to attain herd immunity.
Recomandarea la ora actuală pentru toate țările este ca în decurs de maxim un an de zile sau un an de zile să se imunizeze 60% din populație.
The recommendation right now for all countries is to immunize at least 60% of the population within a year at the most, and at the same time for measures to be taken to keep the rate of infection at the minimum in order to reduce the possibility of mutation of the virus. The more people are infected with the virus, the higher the opportunity for the virus to generate mutations, as happened with the new strain that emerged in the United Kingdom. So this is the idea. 60% of the population immunized within a year and keeping the infection in check, over 70%. And we can talk about functional herd immunity. According to the prestigious Science magazine, the accelerated development of a vaccine against the novel coronavirus in full pandemic is the highest scientific achievement of the year 2020. Dr. Marius Jante, president of the Center for Innovation in Medicine, talks about the factors that facilitated the creation of vaccines much faster than usual.
În primul rând, avem o inovare în modul în care tehnologii de detectare genomică au fost folosite. Acest lucru, maturitatea la care au ajuns aceste...
First of all, we have an innovation in terms of the genomic sequencing technologies available. The maturity of these technologies, as well as data analysis, allowed for a very quick identification of the virus, only 30 days from the first reported case. This means 6 times faster than we were used to in identification of a virus. So, in other words, with the publication of the viral genome on January the 10th, 2020, we, and I mean by this, the scientific community, were able to start working on the design of a vaccine and then the design of clinical studies. Therefore, in January instead of June or July. So there, a gain of half a year derived from the technologies that allowed us to find out very fast what we were dealing with and who we are fighting. The second tier of innovation, and we are talking about a technology that has reached maybe not maturity, but has at least a good start, is the technology of messenger RNA, which is, in fact, the basis of the first vaccines approved by the EU, the Pfizer and BioNTech vaccines. This technology started being developed 30 to 40 years ago. There were over 1,000 registered clinical studies using this technology in the United States. But in the context of this public health crisis, the interest was much higher. And now we come to the third tier of innovation, that at the level of systems and institutions. Traditionally, we were used to having 44,000 people enrolled, the number included in the Pfizer-BioNTech third testing stage, over a long period of time. spacing out the expenses, reducing financial risks. Now the enrollment of these people was done in only a few months. The number is significant. The innovation consisted of taking on the risk and the way in which the regulatory authorities worked with private companies. The fourth tier was at the level of the regulatory authorities themselves, and here I think we already have best practices that have to remain in place.